So, of course, when I left theatre school, when I'd finished at theatre school, during the time, Esme said, you, well, of course, she always spoke like this, you know, she had a beautiful, beautiful amber cigarette holder and an emerald ring. So the emerald ring. And she was not at all a poseur, but she just was like that. And she said, my dear, it's no good you thinking of a stage career, however good you are, my dear. So I said, you know, you'll teach. So I said, I can't teach. You'll teach. You'll be a very good teacher. And she took out her elegant pen with her elegant ring, and she began to sketch out the way drama would work in schools. I was not impressed, of course. And it was the time the West Riding was doing really good work in schools, especially in art. And she said, you do the teaching course. So I thought, well, I'll do the teaching course. Well, the teaching course was hopeless. I mean, even I knew it was hopeless. But I used to go and watch Esme produce. So I used to sit and watch Esme. And of course I had to do the LRAM because it was the teacher's course. And so I have no qualifications for teaching, except an LRAM and what I call my pound of tea master's degree they gave me at Durham.
What's an LRAM?
Oh dear, Licentiate of the Royal Academy of Music. But it's and drama, of course, as well. And she insisted on that because it was a kind of qualification. So when I was coming to the end of theatre school, and I had done teaching practice with no preparation whatsoever, but I had a knack. And one of the people who was very big in the West Riding at the time, Stone, he was one of the school inspectors. He'd come in one day when I was teaching, and of course I wasn't going to teach, you know. And he said, the way you're teaching, he said, really, you won't need to plan any lessons again because you've really got these well planned. And even then I was thinking, what a daft idea. You mean you teach what you taught yesterday? That's ridiculous. And of course, all my life I have never taught anything twice. You rebuild you invent the wheel all the time in teaching. And if you don't, that's why we're in a mess. And I knew, of course, I wouldn't get the job. My application, can you imagine what my application said? I failed my scholarship. I've been to theatre school and so on. And I get word to go for an interview. Well, I came off the train, and of course the station looked lovely. Newcastle was all old buildings then. And I thought, I like this place, you see. I get myself up to Leesy's Terrace, far too early, of course. So I sit in the park. I have to see Brian Stanley at 10 o'clock. So, of course, I've got the 6 o'clock train, haven't I, being me. So there I am, and I'm thinking, gosh, it is a nice place, this. I'm sitting in Leesy's Park, which was nice and tidy then, no litter. So I go in to see Brian. Brian was white-haired from about being 30 years old, so he would look a lot older to me than he really was. He was about 35, I think. Anyway, he said, I thought you might like to ask me anything. I should think I would when he'd seen my letter. Is there anything you'd like to ask me? I said, well, I don't understand superannuation. What is it? He said, well, it's your pension. Oh, I said, there's a pension. So he said, is there anything else? I said, well, I know you wouldn't want me for the job, but if I got it, could I teach the way I think it should be done? He said, as far as I'm concerned, you know, you can run a shop as long as you do it the way you feel right. So I then go away back into Leesy's Park, sit there, and I have to wait till 2 o'clock. I go back into number 13, Leesy's Terrace, or something like that it was, and sat there. And a lady came in, I suppose she was about 35, and I thought, oh, she'll get this job. She was a drama advisor in Sheffield. I'd never heard of them either, but never mind. But there were two of the silliest young women I've seen in a long while. And they obviously were friends, and they'd just come back from somewhere abroad. And they'd just come from RADA. And I kept thinking, well, if they get it, I wouldn't want it, you know, sort of thing. So they went in first, and they never came back. The brown lady went in next, this lovely brown, she had a lovely brown coat and hat on. And I was in my homemade coat, of course. So I said to her, well, when you get the job, will you tell me where you work and I'll apply for yours? You see, crazy, isn't it? And I'm still daft, you know. Anyway, she disappeared. And, you know, the man, I can't remember the name of the clerk who saw me, what's the chief clerk called at the university? He was about 7 feet tall, the registrar. He was about 7 feet tall. He was very, very tall, very gentle person. And of course he came and he said, Miss Shutt. So I went in, and I should say there were a dozen people around that table, which rather astonished me. And they all had pads and pencils, and I noticed they'd all been doodling. And I thought, you know, doodling, you know, there's no way to interview people. Brian said, tell us the story of your life. So I said, well, I should tell you I failed my scholarship. I'm not very bright. So Brian said, how many of us matriculated? Well, I didn't know about that either, you see. How many of us matriculated? And it went round and they all said, no, I didn't. And he said, you're in really good company. We're none of us very bright. So, talk about an interview. So, of course, he was pretty sharp. I mean, he was no idiot, of course. But anyway, at one stage, he sort of said, have you noticed, you know, what sort of things do you notice? I said, well, I'm noticing there's an awful lot of doodling going on here. And when you work in drama, you tend to notice things like that. You notice people all the time, and they immediately all put their pens down and laughed, you see. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm really putting my feet in this. But I never expected the job anyway, you see. So Brian would sort of ask you a simple seeming question, and then he'd suddenly say, read anything on it? And of course I had read anything on it. So I left, and the gentleman said to me, would I wait there? So he took me back to the room, you see. 10 minutes later he came back and said, Miss Shutt. I went through and nobody was there but Brian. And he just said, congratulations. I said, you mean yeah. He said, yes, that's right. He said, and you can. You will get superannuation and you can teach according to how you believe. So I went back home, you see, back on the train, and I actually bought a meal at the station. I mean, never, ever in my life. It felt like a novel. And so, come September, I came up and joined the Frobel course. And of course, Newcastle didn't exist then. It wasn't a university. So I was working between Durham, Cumbria, and I got the marvellous chance of teaching in any school I wanted because the Frobel courses were really going. And the government were beginning to release teachers for year courses. They're just beginning. And it meant I could teach in any school in Newcastle because the teachers were thrilled if you'd come along and try out what you were nattering on about. So I got a lovely apprenticeship. All those gorgeous teachers who lent me their classes to try things out. And of course, I knew from the beginning, if you're not teaching this week, you better not give any lectures on it. And so it was lovely, and there were some gorgeous, amazing heads. I mean, there was Miss Ollie, who never let a parent set foot in the school, but she was wonderful with the kids. And she trusted me with classes. She probably used me a bit like a slave, you know, but it was good. It was really good. And so I got to know children in that sense, you know, and it worked. But of course, at that stage, I couldn't explain it. I couldn't think about it, really. And it's when you have to teach something, you begin to understand it. And that's why kids should be teaching one another.